Thank you for staying with us on the program, everyone. Just as I told you at the top of the show this morning, I want to start with our first discussion, which borders on the incidents of building collapse across this country. One of the most recent that already comes to mind is perhaps the one in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub, where we're told one adult and a child died in that particular incident. It has become, sadly, recurrent decimal in this country. How do we nip it? How do we deal with it? What are some certain issues that must be addressed if we must be able to run circles around these very ugly developments in our country? I'm joined by someone who knows so much about this challenge and has been trained to address many of these issues. Someone with a background, robust background, I must say, in quantity surveying. He's also a builder by training. He proudly says he is a builder by training. And he wants to help us bring insights into many of these issues as far as the building challenge is concerned in Nigeria, what government must do, what even the practitioners themselves must do regarding these issues. I'm joined by builder Gabriel Omoyi. It's a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning.
I want us to start from somewhere. I mean, I understand basically being a human being first before anything else. Every time you hear about building collapses, you don't feel comfortable about them. But they say there's no smoke without fire. How did we get to this very ugly point?
Well, building collapse has been the existence, even right from the existence of man here on earth. What is most important is how his building collapse being managed. Recently in Nigeria, let us domicile it to Nigeria. After Boko Haram, killings by Boko Haram, the next is building collapse.
Interesting. Do we have statistics to that effect?
Yes, we have. If you look at the incident right from 2016 in Lagos, a lot of buildings have collapsed. Let us take it down to 2019. Only in 2019, we have 43 buildings that got collapsed in Nigeria, with 17 of them alone in Lagos, the commercial hub city of Nigeria, 6 in Anambra and other areas, killing lives, increasing the morbidity, and causing a lot of damage both to human life and economy. I think there is need for government to look into this. Building collapse has come to stay if there is no proper legislation that is put in place to control it. And I think with the statistics that is available, so far so good, since 2016, which is just 4 years, we have 176 buildings that have collapsed. Most recently, that claims a lot of life was the one at Itafaji, which happened last year, March here, where a lot of lives were, children in schools were killed just because of the collapse. So what is government doing about it?
So are we saying this is entirely a problem of legislation?
Well, yeah, legislation has a lot to do about it.
But don't you have some piece of legal instruments that supposedly addresses issues regarding urban developments, for example?
Yeah, you see, in the built environment, we have about 7 professionals in the built environment. When you have a piece of land and you want to delineate the piece of land, you seek the service of the surveyor. And the surveyor is being regulated by SOCON. If you meet...
SOCON, I suppose, is an association?
No, it's a government regulation.
It's a government regulation, okay.
These 7 built environmental professionals are being regulated by federal government with the regulatory agency. SOCON regulates survey, QS Highway regulates quantity surveyors, CORE regulates engineers, CORBON regulates builders, and so on and so forth. And
then we have the INOB too, where...
These agencies are being backed by the National Assembly with the acts of the National Assembly of 2004.
Yet we are in this situation.
Yes, stating their various roles, what they need to perform in the building industry. For example, for you to design a building, the architect will design.
But we have seen architects building, not designing.
A product can never be better than the environment that produces it. Government created courses in the universities, and these courses, you are being taught accordingly to what you go to the society to produce.
So an architect, for example, cannot, as it were, superimpose a builder. That's the point.
No. Yeah, so vis-a-vis, the builder cannot also design. When it comes to the issue of design, it is purely the role of the architects to design the building. I know most often you see a lot of designs flying everywhere. The reason why government established regulatory agencies is to make sure that somebody is held liable for action taken. And you have ACON that regulates the architects. Then, when the building is above a first floor that requires a structural member, the structural engineer is brought in. That is after the architect has finished his building design, he hands over to the structural engineer. And when he says somebody is a structural engineer, this is a specialist who has been certified as a structural engineer by Nigeria Institute of Structural Engineers. And his current license, present current license, must be updated and not an expired license. So
he can still be in practice.
If the license is not renewed, it's as good as it's not in practice, because it's being regulated.
But still, I'll tell you one of the problems most of us have seen in society today as far as this discussion is concerned. It will appear many otherwise professionals, people who have been trained, for example, across these 7 fields in building that you've talked about now, for example, they would rather put hustle over professionalism. That's a problem. Economic implications too, right?
Yeah, that is where the issue of legislation comes in.
Okay.
Governments, just like I was telling you, when the design and the structural design is being done, the production aspect of that building, when it comes to building, is the function of a builder. In everything, sir, there is check and balances. If you design and you construct, who checks you? Who checks you? So if you build and design, you have every right to take any decision that can bring about, poor quality. Quality control will be totally absent. What is the purpose of design and construction? It's for quality assurance and quality control. So that at the end of the day, specifications stated are met and the place is habitable for every dwellers, so that their lives and property will be what saved.
Let's look at it from the angle of members of the public. I mean, the building public, for example.
Yes,
there's also there's naturally the tendency to want to, as much as possible, cut costs. So somebody is rather would rather pick, as it were, an artisan randomly from town who probably has built a couple of houses here and there to help manage their building projects, because it's going to be cheaper ultimately for them, and that's natural, as against coming to a trained practicing professional like yourself who is going to be charging exorbitantly. Isn't that a concern too? I mean, realistically?
No, for a man to embark on a building that will cost 14, 30, 50 million, what is the cost of the professional? For your information, the professional skills are available by law for every professional who is undertaking any aspect of the building works. Is there. But the society is not aware. For example, just like if you engage somebody who is not trained, who by practical knowledge can be able to undertake building, where is the regulation? Who will be held liable if something comes up? The purpose why professionals are being engaged is to be held liable for their action. If you engage a quack to take care of your building and the building collapses, where is the law that you use to execute him? To prosecute him? Sorry? To prosecute him. Because we are looking at actions and prosecution. You cannot just go, it's a laissez-faire environment where anything can go. So if we continue in this way, that is why if you watch in the most Western world, the people that is undergoing the construction work, be it road, be it building, their names are stated on the billboard.
But I think that really probably doesn't sit well with many persons watching and listening right now, because I understand basically in the medical field, for example,
yes.
I'm a broadcaster. I can't perform surgery, for instance. If I were caught performing surgery, I'm very sure I'll be prosecuted for being an imposter, because I'm not licensed to perform surgery. Can we replicate that kind of, as it were, arrangement in the building space?
Yes. What you say there is professionalism taking its course.
Okay.
Just like you said, surgery. Surgery is a specialist work.
Yes.
So also the built environment, they are specialist work. Like the structural engineer is a specialist work. The architect is a specialist work. The builder is a specialist work. The surveyor is a specialist work. The enforcement of the laws are available. If you look at the CAP 2004, they are there specifying.
But do those laws capture the realities that we have today, real time?
Yes, it's clear. The laws are there.
So what do we lack? Is it willpower?
Yeah, the willpower. For example, if a building collapses, the law states that the building production is the main function of the builder. And now if a building collapses, and the police gets to that scene, and you discover that the man that is in charge of production is not a builder. Even if he has to be a structural member that is taking place, the person on site is not a structural engineer. Which law will you use to prosecute the person handling the project? Will you use Builder's Act to prosecute the engineer? Or will you use the Surveyor's Act to prosecute the builder? But if there is a building, if the building is ongoing, and the structural engineers are there on the spot check, and the builders is the one producing this building project, mind you, building projects are the main functions of the builder to produce. But the builders are not also licensed by practice to construct roads and bridges.
But we have all of those happening.
Yes, that is why I told you the problem we have is just legislation.
You know, it's interesting to know that you are the chairman of Nigerian Institute of Building.
Yes, sir.
Edo State chapter. What's your institute doing about all of these problems?
Yeah, but you see, if you look at building, it's just a single cause. You know, politically, before 1989, building and civil was together.
Okay.
Building and civil. For most persons that attended IFE and other schools, you say at final year you separate either to civil or to building. They have been brothers right from the beginning. 1989, when the decree came out, you know, on the establishment of the Building Act, you know, then the building decree of 1989, then which was now revised in 2004. Giving separate powers to the two professions.
Yes.
If you look at the curriculum, it has been totally separated. The building course one side, the civil engineering course one side. But they at a way interrelate when it comes to the structural part of the building. They relate. So when the building production management process is ongoing, the builder is the manager of the project, while the architect and the structural engineer, they do what we call what? A spot check to see if what they have designed is actually what is being produced. These whole issues is just for check and balances. That's all, sir.
The Washington Post did, I mean, that's apparently an American tabloid, did a story, very succinct but incisive, on the last, I mean, one of the last building collapses that we recorded, which was in Lagos.
Yes.
They did a story about it and a few other ones. That story was done sometime on the 11th of last month by the Washington Post, where they mentioned corruption has been a very key element in the collapse of buildings. I mean, in this country, we've not talked about corruption, about all of this. You have people who cut corners. You have people who understand, just like yourself, the laws and what the regulations are. Yet they circumvent all of these, as it were, regulatory framework just to be able to gain an upper hand or win an advantage. Corruption is a problem, isn't it?
Yes, you are correct. But you see, we speak more again on the issue of legislation.
Okay. Would that also address corruption?
Yes, that will. That will. And enforcement.
Enforcement?
Yes, legislation and enforcement. Now, for example, let me domicile this discussion to our state here. We have a parastate, or we have a ministry that takes care of approval, that is pre-construction
Before you even start at all?
Before you start. The approvers. So, okay, you do the design of your building, you carry out the environmental impact assessment, soil test, and every other thing, you know, then it's approved for construction.
But we really follow through this process.
We don't have the agency to check construction if design and construction is actually going on as approved. In Lagos State, they have, but Edo State, I think very soon, I believe the government is looking into that aspect. But there is needs for check and balances so that building collapse and poor quality, even up to this corruption we are looking at, if there is a check, corruption will be reduced. For example, federal government established Standard Organization of Nigeria to check for quality of materials. Again, when you see approval plan, it is there that engage the structural engineer for this aspect of the section because it was designed. But you know, it got cross process of the building. For example, even for that, approvals done. Approvals are they done? Do we have a clearing house? At the time approving this plan, who checked the structural design? Who checked the structural design? Who carried out the ability assessment? These things are not there.
Two questions I was asking before I'm done. Yeah. They used to be, if I buy a piece of land in a community in the state right now, then I see, in likelihood is I want to start building straight away. The first, I want to sell the land. And the second, as we say at the hot, right? So when it comes through, I'm trying to plow it straight away into that project. So I'm not going to give so much of attention, most likely, to all of these processes that have been laid down. What should the typical Nigerian watching right now be learning as a member of the public who either has built, is building, or will be building anytime soon?
Yeah. Well, whether you like it or not, sir, this we have been discussing, these processes we have been discussing is what you cannot neglect them. You can't spend millions of naira to have a property, and without property having documentation. So how will you feel, sir? If somebody walk into the house and ask you to leave the house, that the house is not for you because you have no approval. And secondly, if you don't engage a professional to handle your building, you may end up spending more. You may end up spending more. But the right processes are very clear in the sense that the Bible even stated that who is he that embark on a project without first counting the cost? So when you want to embark on any project, you should be able to know the cost and know the right professional to manage for you. Because if you don't engage it, guessing work is not done in construction work. Constructions are based on calculations. In
2018, I spoke with a few of your colleagues, some of them from building, others surveyors, basically from the entire value chain of those who are trained to handle building-related issues. And one of them talked about how that there are buildings all over this country that are already weak. A number of them will collapse in a matter of a few years. As we speak on this live program this morning, there's the likelihood that we have buildings scattered across this country whose structures are pathetically and menacingly weak. What can be done to salvage this kind of reality?
Yes, just like what I told you. There is need to have a post-approval agency who supervise the construction and the existing building structure in this town.
Existing buildings?
Yes, existing building. What we are talking about is majority of the existing buildings are weak. So what do they need to do is to go out, is to go out to the various cities and towns to carry out what we call integrity and stability test.
Integrity and stability test?
Yes, to see the nature of this building. And the towns recommend if this building may be demolished. If you look at it, we have an advocacy group called BCPC, Building Protection Control Group, who, with LASCA, assist to check buildings at what they are doing. And recommend. So they like it or not, the majority of the building in the city needs to be demolished.
It sounded a bit scary now, too, quickly. Somebody has worked there for 40 years, for example. So
yes.
They use their entire license to build maybe a 4-bedroom bungalow. Okay. And then a few years down the line, it is discovered the structure is weak, and the only option to them 4 is to demolish. Will there be some reprieve? Is there an arrangement within this act we were talking about all the time? Well, to create some reprieve, give some relief, some soft land and sort.
Well, that is where professional advice comes in. For a bungalow, structural members, when to call with the enforcement operator. Most of the fellows experience in those bungalows can be treated, with maintenance. That's why for you to build, maintain something. If you build a building, you know continuity. You can't just build without taking maintenance. So all the buildings that have both first floor, that has structural members, right. There needs to carry out those tests. But don't do this slice. Well, if there are visible practices, you can treat them because
without bringing a structure.
Not bringing a structure. Except there is no poor workmanship, which automatically brings failure to the building.
Okay, I think this is not about as regards this issue, but it's again always an issue that continues to expand, and the reality to find in front of us. And we have to bring back professionals like this on the program, so help us make sense of the issues we are dealing with. Builder Gabriel Moi, I want to thank you especially for not.
Thank you so much.
Gabriel Moi is the chair, that's the chairman of Nigerian Institute of. One time, I'm proud that you first for when you had in 2017, and I remember your national president. They told me, not Nigerian Institute of Builders, that's Nigerian Institute of Building.
Yes,
he established the fact that it is an institution,
yes,
not just an association.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to say that just to establish the fact that these are people who have been trained to deal with this aspect of urban development in this country. Thank you again for coming, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Just on a concluding note, remember, building does not collapse on paper. Thank you.
It's a practical thing. Okay, we'll remember that always. So take a quick break now, everyone. We're back shortly to have a second discussion with the program. Don't go away.